I spend a lot of time talking about dismal Disney, and there are many reasons for that, whether it be their poor management of the theme parks that they control and most of the other entertainment industry that they control. But lately, I've been focused in on Lucasfilm and Star Wars and products that are coming to like Disney Plus. And I have to tell you, Disney's got a huge problem in Star Wars. Star Wars is a failure. Star Wars is anything but inclusive. No matter what they try to sell you, there's not any inclusivity at all. In fact, it's kind of an exclusive thing now. It's excluding the fans. And rather than deal with that reality, you're going to continue to hear people say that there's review bombing and other weird things like that. You're going to hear that it's just the over 50 white guys that are, not liking Star Wars. And all evidence to the contrary, if you look at the viewership, if you look at the reviews, it kind of runs the gamut. And interestingly enough, the audience that was supposed to replace everybody that was leaving, well, they're not. And it's been jokingly suggested that maybe it was just people like me that were watching this new show, The Acolyte, because absent that, what would the actual viewership be? It's a good question. But of the many reasons that people cite for not enjoying The Acolyte or any of the new Disney minus programs that are being thrown out there into the world, and, of course, the approximately 3% of the total subscriber base watching this particular show, they really are leaning into actively destroying the property. And if you don't believe me, well, I've got an article for you. Of course, before we get started, I have to remind you that part of the way that I survive is, well, my website right down here, beachpunk.us, where you can get amazing wonderful beach quality clothing and, well, clothing for year round as well. With great designs, we have ladies' shoes, we've got sandals, we've got all kinds of things. We've got beanies and hats and t-shirts and sweatshirts and handbags and shopping bags and you name it. Towels even, if you like them. But you can check out the website at beachpunk.us. And if you stick around to the end of this video and you hear the secret word, put it in the comments section down below, and I'll make sure you get a discount code. On that note, let's talk a little bit about Leslie Headland admitting The Acolyte is about breaking down the Jedi as a concept. That doesn't sound particularly good. If anything, it's very frustrating, if not outright disgusting. But why would they do this? Why repurpose something that people love and turning it into something that people loathe? I don't know. Let's read through this article from That Park Place. So, the Acolyte showrunner was talking to, in an interview with Collider, mentioning that the purposes of the show is to break down the Jedi as a concept. You want to, make the good guys the bad guys. This sounds like a cultural takeover, and these things have happened in history, and you don't have to look that far back to point at some that dramatically, if not drastically, changed a country's future for, well, the last 100 years or so. Maybe slightly less, but it's definitely something that comes as part of those efforts, changing the culture. So in speaking with Maggie Lovett over at Collider, Headland was asked for you, as a fan of Star Wars, how much fun has it been to get to pick apart these ideas that have been baked into the franchises for so long, and then flip the narrative a little bit and make people look at things from a very different point of view. In other words, make the good guys the bad guys and the bad guys the good guys. Because, well, you identify with the bad guy, which, admittedly, Headland does. Headland responded, I hope it's making people look at it from a different point of view. Duh. He's just repeating what the interviewer said. I can understand that fans, especially people who don't know the High Republic, which would be almost everybody, because nobody's buying those books, they can't seem to be able to give them away. may feel like I'm criticizing the Jedi as they exist in George Lucas's Star Wars, meaning the prequels and episodes 5 through 6. But that's not the case. We're so much further back from that. We're in the era that Obi-Wan is talking about in A New Hope. We're in that period where the proliferation of power is so huge and far-reaching, actually, in the episode. You're going to... Try that again. We're in the period where the proliferation of power is so huge and so far-reaching. Actually, in the next episode, you're going to see how far-flung particular missions with Jedi are and the lack of oversight. Okay. However, in a follow-up question, Hedlund made it clear that what her intention was. Lovett stated, we get a little bit of a tease of that here in this episode with the whole thing with Ray in court talking about doing this audit, essentially, of the Jedi Order, which I think is great. What? No, dumb. That's very true to where George Lucas was approaching things in the prequels, which is very political, very much a response to that kind of dynamic with the Jedi. Hedlund replied, yeah, so comparing these Jedi to the Jedi in the prequels is a little difficult because it's 100 years-ish. It's a century. So you see, Vernestra's like, we cannot let this happen. She gets more and more concerned about that at the end of the season, and I'm sure you got more and more concerned about that, Hedlund, with your wife's character, probably. Moving on. And rightfully so, because as a very powerful Jedi Master can sort of see what's on the horizon, whereas when we meet the Jedi in the prequels, they're completely enmeshed at that point. Going back to your question, one of the interesting ways to unpack the Jedi is when they are at their height as they are here. What are the things they're doing differently? A Jedi doesn't pull their weapon unless prepared to kill. That's just a High Republic concept. They don't have battle droids. They don't have other people with lightsabers. There isn't any reason to pull it. Comparing that to anybody in the prequels is not the same. They're just not the same Jedi. Whatever. So in my opinion, and in my experience, and what I was interested in digging into is, it seems like it's a time where you can break down the Jedi as a concept, whereas I wouldn't want to touch what has been established of them a century later. She's trying to get distance from this. She knows how bad it is. She knows how poorly it's been received. She knew it was going to be poorly received, and so did Lucasfilm, which is why they set up the dogs to play defense early on, considering that the entire fan base has been getting more and more frustrated with everything Disney has been putting together. And that's entirely the point. Because whether or not you're watching this weird relationship that they tried to make happen with Kirmir and Osha, that's maybe the least interesting thing that they can do, except for the people from the Tumblr audience, I guess. And I think that's the whole point, is by creating a fan fiction version of Star Wars that's offered to the general public, they believe that they can change the audience of Star Wars. And maybe they can, but it just won't be that many people. There aren't enough people that are interested in that weird, quirky garbage that you used to find over there, and maybe still can. But when it comes to Star Wars fans, people that have dyed in the wool, even people that are just exposed to the first 6 episodes, let's say, of the original films, they come out loving Star Wars and not being able to identify even a morsel of George Lucas or even any feeling of Star Wars in almost anything that's been produced by Disney, absent, of course, what Jon Favreau produced in the first 2 seasons of The Mandalorian, which largely felt like Star Wars, but didn't seem exactly all Star Wars, and maybe, just maybe, that was headed in a direction of something that could have been good. Ultimately, Disney put their foot in it, stopped any development of any other projects that seemed interesting, and lean more heavily into the agenda-driven things that they advertise, practically, that they're doing. So, no, Disney Star Wars and Disney in general is not inclusive. They're very exclusive, and they're driving that exclusivity to the point where only 3% of their subscriber base will watch their show. If that, they certainly won't finish it. And a number of people are moving away from traversing their theme parks and other offerings. I think the worst situation here isn't just for the fans of Star Wars, because they can always go back in time and watch the things they love. I think that this is worse for the people that love Disney as a whole and are finally waking up and recognizing that Disney doesn't love them back. In fact, maybe 6% of the population might love Disney now. I don't know. That's probably hyperbole, but it may not be in the future. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments section below. I'd like to hear it, because if I'm wrong when it comes to whether or not Disney's Star Wars is inclusive in the sense that everybody will enjoy it, I want to know that. I just don't think I'm wrong. On that note, secret word of the day is game from That Game Place. So just put game as the secret word, and I'll make sure you get a 10% discount code that's good through July 14th. As I said, on that note, be sure to take care of yourself, take care of others, and until next time, see ya.